Beaches have always terrified me. Well, not always, just since that one weekend when everything changed. Back when I was 17, I loved the coast. The smell of salt in the air, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, the sense of freedom summer always brought. It all felt perfect. But that illusion shattered during one weekend that I'll never forget. My best friends, Ethan and Lucas, had planned a small trip to Lucas's family beach house in southern France. His parents were away in Spain, and the house was ours for 3 full days. Just us, some alcohol, and the promise of no rules. We were young, reckless, and stupidly confident that nothing could ruin our perfect summer. Lucas's house sat right on the edge of a calm lagoon, the kind of place where the sea water slipped in quietly between rows of expensive vacation homes. At night, the water turned black and still, almost mirror-like. That view should have been peaceful, but would later become the most haunting image burned into my memory. By sunset, we invited a few girls we'd met earlier that week: Sophie, Emma, and Lily. They were cheerful, laughing, recording TikToks, drinking cheap wine. The air was full of youth and carelessness. Around midnight, we decided to take a swim in the pool out back. The night air was warm, and the lagoon reflected the full moon like a silver blade. Everything felt so alive. But then Lucas turned the music down. "Did you see that?" he whispered. I followed his gaze across the dark lagoon. At first, I saw nothing. Then movement. A faint figure, maybe 2, standing on the opposite dock, watching us. "Probably locals," I said, trying to sound casual. Lucas shook his head. "No one lives in that house this month. My parents said the family's in Italy." A chill crawled down my spine. The girls noticed our silence and asked what was wrong. Ethan muttered, "Nothing, probably some fishermen," and turned the music back up, but the uneasy mood lingered. A few minutes later, Emma gasped, "Someone just moved." This time we all saw it. The silhouettes on the dock shifted slightly, then froze again, facing straight toward us. Lucas's voice trembled. "Let's go inside." We climbed out of the pool, dripping, trying not to panic. But before we even reached the sliding glass doors, a sound cut through the air. 4 quick splashes. It took us a moment to process what that meant. Then it hit us. "They're swimming," whispered Sophie. And that's when the night turned into a nightmare. For a few seconds, none of us moved. Only the sound of the water filled the air, soft ripples, then silence again. Ethan whispered, "They're coming this way." We all turned toward the lagoon. The moonlight caught something moving in the water, slow, deliberate strokes like someone trying not to make noise. Lucas ran inside to grab a flashlight. He flicked it on and pointed it toward the lagoon. At first, we saw nothing. Then just barely a pale face surfaced, eyes glinting in the beam before sinking back under. Emma screamed, "Oh my God!" Lucas cursed and killed the light instantly. "Don't make noise," he hissed. "Just get inside." We stumbled into the house, locking the glass doors behind us. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. Sophie pulled the curtains shut while Ethan ran to check if the front door was locked. "What the hell was that?" Lily whispered. Lucas's hands were shaking. "I don't know. Maybe someone from the village, or..." He stopped. Outside, something tapped on the glass. Once, then again. A slow, deliberate sound, like fingers against a window. No one dare move. We stood frozen in the dark living room, listening. Then, from the back of the house, another sound. This one sharper. Clink, like metal touching metal. The bikes, Ethan muttered. They're near the garage. Lucas looked around, pale. They're trying to get in. We turned off every light and crouched near the kitchen. I took my phone out, but the signal was gone. Just one empty bar where 4G should have been. The tapping grew louder, then stopped suddenly. Silence again. Then came the splash, heavier this time. Someone had just climbed out of the lagoon. Sophie whispered, trembling, "Call someone, please." Lucas pointed toward the hallway. "The landline. It's in my dad's office." Ethan nodded and crept toward the dark hallway. The rest of us waited, barely breathing. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. No sound. No Ethan. I whispered his name. "Ethan." Nothing. That's when the front door handle twisted. Someone was trying to open it from outside. Lucas grabbed the nearest thing, a wine bottle, and motioned for us to stay quiet. The handle turned again, harder this time, and then a voice low, muffled, right outside the door. "Open up." Not shouted, not angry, just cold. We stood there in silence, the weight of that whisper filling the entire house. Then a crash. Glass shattered from the back room. Someone was inside. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the entire house. Sophie screamed and covered her mouth with both hands. Lucas whispered, "Back room." "They're inside." We crouched behind the kitchen counter, barely daring to breathe. Footsteps, slow and heavy, moved across the living room floor. Each creak of the wood made my skin crawl. "Ethan," I whispered, almost hoping to hear his voice. Silence. Only the faint dripping of water somewhere near the hallway. "They're wet," Lucas mouthed. From the lagoon. Something scraped against the wall, a dragging sound like someone pulling metal across plaster. Then the footsteps stopped. We waited. 5 seconds. 10. Then came a whisper, faint but close. "Too close. Why did you lock the door?" Sophie let out a tiny gasp and clutched my arm. Lucas turned pale, slowly peeking above the counter. Nothing there, but the front door, the one that had been locked, now hung slightly open. "I locked that," Lucas said, shaking his head. "I swear I locked it." We backed toward the hallway where Ethan had gone. The darkness there looked thicker than before, swallowing the light from the kitchen. My phone screen barely lit the way. 2:43 a.m. No service. "Ethan," I whispered again. "If you can hear us, say something." A faint noise answered, tap, 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 from the office. We followed it. The office door was half closed. Something dripped beneath it, small, steady drops forming a dark puddle. Lucas pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the landline phone was off the hook, swinging slightly. And there, on the floor, were wet footprints leading toward the open window. But Ethan wasn't there. Sophie began to cry silently. He wouldn't just leave us. Then the phone, still hanging, let out a sound. Not a dial tone, not static. A voice, whispering, "Get out before the tide comes." Lucas grabbed the receiver. "Who is this? Where's Ethan?" But the line went dead. We turned toward the window and froze. Someone was standing at the edge of the lagoon, completely still, just watching the house. The moonlight glinted off their drenched clothes, and their head tilted slowly, unnaturally, as if their neck had no bones. Then they began walking back into the water. The rest of the night felt endless. We barricaded the doors with furniture, shut every window, and sat huddled in the living room. The sound of waves outside was constant, slow, steady, and cruelly close. Sophie whispered, "We should leave. I don't care if it's dark." Lucas shook his head. The road's flooded. The car's useless until morning. My phone battery was at 3%. The last message I tried to send, "Help us," still said, "Not delivered." No signal, no internet, only the sound of the sea and something moving under the floorboards. At first, we thought it was the pipes, but then came a knocking. Soft, rhythmic, like someone gently tapping from beneath the house. Thump, thump, thump. Lucas grabbed the flashlight. It's coming from the crawl space. I didn't want to look, but curiosity or fear made me follow him. We pulled aside the carpet and found the small hatch door. It was old with a rusty latch. The knocking stopped the moment Lucas touched it. Sophie stayed behind, whispering, "Please don't open that." He looked at me. "It might be Ethan." I nodded, even though every instinct screamed no. Lucas pulled the latch. The hatch creaked open, releasing a thick, humid breath of air that smelled like salt and rot. I pointed the flashlight down. The beam caught something wet and moving. At first, it looked like seaweed. Then, it turned, and I realized it was a hand. Bloated, fingertips shredded as if scraped against rocks. Sophie screamed. Lucas dropped the light. It flickered on the dirt walls, showing more shapes below. Dozens of them. Bodies, all face down, half buried in mud, swaying slightly as if breathing with the tide. The knocking started again, but this time from the walls. Thump, thump. The windows rattled. The air turned cold, sharp, metallic. We slammed the hatch shut. Lucas dragged a heavy chest over it, breathing hard. This place, it's built over something. Over them. I stared at the water stains spreading across the wooden floor. They looked like hands reaching upward. Sophie cried, "Why us?" But I had a terrible thought. Maybe it wasn't about us. Maybe we had simply stayed too long in a house that belonged to the tide. Outside, the first light of dawn began to show, but the water level was higher than before. Much higher. The entire beach gone. When the first pale light of morning touched the curtains, I thought we'd made it through. The knocking had stopped. The house was silent, except for the sound of the sea, but it didn't sound right. Lucas went to the window. "Guys, come here." We joined him, and what we saw didn't make sense. The beach was gone, completely. Where sand used to be, there was only water stretching all the way to the horizon. Our house was surrounded, like an island swallowed by the tide. Sophie gasped. "We're trapped." Lucas ran outside before I could stop him. The wooden steps leading down to the ground were now half submerged. The water lapped at his shoes, dark and cold. "Don't go further," I shouted, but he ignored me. He waded in, scanning the waves. Ethan might still be out there. The name hit me like a stone. Ethan, the guy who'd vanished last night. We'd all assumed he'd gone to town for help. Suddenly, Sophie pointed. There, by the old pier, something or someone was standing waist deep in the water, facing away from us. Ethan's shirt, his height, his stance. Lucas cupped his hand around his mouth. "Ethan!" The figure turned. It was Ethan, but wrong. His skin was gray and swollen. Seaweed hung from his hair, and his eyes were pure white. He began walking toward us, Slow, uneven steps, water streaming off him. Sophie screamed. Lucas froze. I ran to pull him back, yelling, "Get inside, now!" Ethan reached the shore, or what was left of it. As he stepped onto the submerged path, the water around him started to boil. Small bubbles rising, popping, releasing a foul stench like decay. He opened his mouth, and water poured out. Not a scream, not words, just endless, choking water. We slammed the door and pushed the dresser in front of it. The sound of footsteps sloshing outside echoed around the house. Then silence. For a moment, I thought it was over, until I heard Sophie whisper, trembling, "He's inside." We turned. Ethan stood in the hallway, dripping, leaving a trail of dark water behind him. His head tilted unnaturally, eyes fixed on us. And then, in a voice that didn't belong to him, he said, "You shouldn't have stayed the night." For a few seconds, none of us could move. Ethan stood in the hallway, drenched, his wet footprints spreading across the floor like veins of black ink. The air smelled of salt and rot. Sophie sobbed. "Ethan, what happened to you?" He blinked slowly, tilting his head. When he opened his mouth, water spilled out again, but this time mixed with sand. "I tried to swim back," he rasped. His voice sounded like whined through a seashell. "The tide, it wouldn't let me go." Lucas whispered, "That's not possible." Ethan turned toward him, eyes unfocused. "It pulled me down. It showed me the house. Said it remembers." The lights flickered. Somewhere under the floorboards, the knocking started again. Thump, thump, thump. I stepped back. "What remembers?" Ethan looked straight at me. "The sea," he said. "It doesn't forget what was built on its grave." The words made my stomach twist. Sophie backed away, trembling. "He's not real. He drowned." Ethan suddenly gasped, clutching his chest. Water began leaking from his shirt, pouring onto the floor. Within seconds, the puddles spread across the room, moving toward us. Lucas tried to block it with a chair, but the water slipped around it like it was alive. It crept over his shoes, up his legs, freezing cold. He screamed, falling to the floor. The puddle climbed higher, pulling him down as if invisible hands were dragging him beneath. I grabbed his arms. "Hold on." But the more I pulled, the more the water resisted. For a split second, I saw faces beneath the surface, pale, drowned, eyes open. Sophie screamed, "Let him go." Lucas's body jerked once, and then the water went still. He was gone. Only his phone floated to the surface, the flashlight still on, shining weakly under the table. Ethan was gone too. No sound, no movement, just the faint hum of waves outside and the slow dripping of water from the ceiling. Sophie whispered, "It's not just the tide anymore. It's in the house." And then we both heard it from every direction, the whisper of the ocean, like thousands of voices speaking together. One by one, the windows began to tremble. The floor tilted slightly, as though the house itself was breathing. The floor was tilting. The house moaned like a sinking ship as the water surged up through the cracks. Sophie screamed when the kitchen door burst open, not from someone pushing it, but from pressure. A torrent of black water exploded in, carrying pieces of seaweed and something that looked disturbingly like human hair. I grabbed her hand. "Upstairs. Now." We ran up the spiral staircase, our feet splashing through rising water. By the time we reached the second floor, the house felt like it was breathing. Boards creaking, glass trembling, air thick with salt. Behind us, furniture floated. Downstairs, the TV flickered to life, static, then a blurred image of waves crashing on a screen. Sophie gasped, "It's showing outside." She was right. The TV wasn't playing anything recorded. It was showing our lagoon live, except the water was higher, much higher. We reached Charles's old room and slammed the door shut. But water was already seeping through the keyhole. "Windows," I said. "We can climb to the deck." Sophie nodded, trembling, tears mixing with the sea mist. We shoved open the window, and the wind hit us, freezing violent. The deck was slick and trembling beneath waves that kept crashing against it, though we were supposed to be far above sea level. The sky was almost black. Thunder rolled, but it wasn't from clouds. It came from below, from the water. Sophie looked up and gasped. "Look, the boat." Out on the dark horizon, a small vessel floated silently. Its hull was cracked, but it glowed faintly from within, pale green light seeping through its seams. It was the same model as the one that had been stolen years ago. But there was something else, figures on the deck. 3 of them, still unmoving, their faces hidden under dripping hoods. Sophie whispered, "They're watching us again." One of the figures lifted a hand slowly and pointed directly at us. The water beneath the house trembled violently, and I felt the deck tilt even more. "Go!" I shouted. "To the roof." We climbed the narrow ladder attached to the back railing, waves hitting our legs with each step. The moment we reached the top, the house groaned and shifted. The roof bent, and a long crack ran across the shingles. From the lagoon came a sound I'll never forget, a chorus of wet, gargled voices chanting in unison, rising with the tide. "Return what was taken." Sophie's hair whipped across her face. "What are they talking about?" Before I could answer, something hit the roof from below, a loud thud, then another. Boards split open. A pale, bloated hand reached through the crack, grasping blindly for us. The hand clawed through the roof, bloated, white and waterlogged. Its nails were cracked like seashells. Sophie shrieked, stumbling backward as another arm broke through beside it, dragging a chunk of the roof into the water below. "Sophie, run!" I yelled, though there was nowhere left to run. The entire house was sinking inch by inch. From below, the chanting grew louder. "Return what was taken! Return what was taken!" The roof creaked beneath us. Sophie was crying now, whispering, "It's them, it's those people from the dock." I turned toward the lagoon. The glowing boat was now right beside the house, its light rippling across the rising waves. 3 shadowy figures stood on the deck, motionless, except one who stepped forward. Or it had no face, just a hollow, black space where a face should have been, dripping salt water. Yet somehow, I could feel his gaze locking on me. "What do you want?" I screamed. The wind carried my voice away, but the figure answered in a voice like breaking wood. "The sea remembers. The dead do not forgive." Sophie backed away, shaking her head. No, this isn't real." Then, another impact from below. The roof split open completely. The water surged through, dragging furniture, lamps, and fragments of memory upward like ghosts rising to the surface. I grabbed Sophie's arm and pulled her toward the last dry corner of the roof. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, I saw faces in the water below. Dozens of them. Men, women, even children, pale, their eyes open, mouths moving silently. "Return it," one of them whispered, their voice somehow echoing inside my skull. I looked at the boat again. Its faint glow flickered, and I saw something carved into the wood along its side. Kieran. The name froze my blood. It was the name of Charles's younger brother, the one who disappeared months after the robbery, the one they said drowned off the coast one night. Sophie saw it too. "Oh my God," she gasped. "They think we took him." The figure on the glowing boat slowly raised its hand again, this time pointing not at the house, but straight into the water below. Something was moving there, a dark shape, spiraling up through the deep, like a body floating toward the surface. Then the voice came again, deeper, closer, surrounding us completely. "Bring him back, or stay with him forever." The next wave hit with impossible force. The roof splintered. Sophie screamed as she lost her footing, sliding toward the edge, and I lunged to grab her, our hands slipping in the freezing rain. She fell, straight into the black water below. "Sophie," I shouted, leaning over, but there was nothing. Just ripples and silence. Then beneath the surface, I saw her, eyes open, mouth moving, but no bubbles came out. Someone was holding her down. The moment Sophie vanished beneath the waves, the world around me went silent. No wind, no thunder, no sound of crashing waves. Just that awful stillness, the kind that comes before something wakes up. I dove in after her. The water was shockingly cold, burning my skin like acid as I plunged deeper. Below, faint lights flickered, pale blue glows weaving between the darkness, forming shapes, faces. "Sophie," I shouted, but my voice was devoured by the water. Through the dim haze, I finally saw her, drifting downward, limp, her hair floating like seaweed around her face. I kicked hard, reaching for her hand, and then something grabbed me. A hand, swollen, corpse-like, clamped around my ankle and yanked me deeper. I screamed, bubbles exploding from my mouth as the dark closed in. The water around me grew thicker, almost heavy, as if it didn't want me to leave. More hands appeared, reaching from the gloom, dozens of them. They pulled at my clothes, my hair, dragging me into a whirlpool of pale, hollow-eyed faces. Their mouths were open, but no sound came out, just streams of bubbles rising like prayers. Then I heard him, that voice again, the one from the boat. "You took what was ours. You let him drown." I twisted around, and there he was, the faceless figure hovering in the water in front of me, glowing faintly. Behind him, I saw Sophie, motionless, held upright by the same dead hands that clutched at me. "I didn't take anyone," I shouted, though the words were just muffled gurgles in the deep. The figure tilted its head as if listening. Then it raised its hand, and the water around me changed. The blue glow turned red, and through it, I saw another body floating upward. It was a boy, maybe 17, his face pale, eyes empty, his hand clutching something metallic, a boat key. My mind went numb. Charles's brother, Kieran. The figure pointed at me again. "You never returned him." I shook my head violently, bubbles spiraling upward. "We didn't even know he was gone," I tried to say. Then, From behind the faceless thing, Sophie's body began to twitch. Her eyes snapped open, but they were pure white. Her lips moved, speaking the same words as the others. Return what was taken. The dead began to rise around me, circling like shadows in the tide. The faceless man reached forward, pressing his palm against my chest, and suddenly, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the dock, coughing up salt water. The storm was gone, the house gone, the glowing boat gone. Only the lagoon remained, calm, moonlit, still. Sophie was nowhere to be seen. The only sound was the faint creaking of wood and the soft splash of something moving just below the surface. I looked down, and there, caught between the planks, was a small, rusted key. Its tag read, Kieran's boat. My hand shook. The water rippled once more, and I swore I heard Sophie's voice, faint, carried on the wind. You should have left the water alone. I woke up to the sound of seagulls. Morning light spilled across my face, and for a brief second, I thought it had all been a dream. The lagoon was calm again, the tide soft and glittering in the sunrise. No storm, no footprints, no wreckage, just sand, untouched and perfect. I sat up slowly, my body aching, my head pounding. Charles was gone. Sophie was gone. The house vanished. All that remained was the dock I'd washed up on and that rusted boat, key lying beside me. For hours I walked the shoreline, calling their names. But no echo ever came back. By the time the police arrived, I was half delirious. They took me in, asked endless questions. You said there was a house on the water? You said your friends were staying with you? I nodded, again and again. But when we drove back to the spot, there was nothing. No house, no debris, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. Just the wide, silent lagoon. One of the officers sighed, closing his notepad. Son, there hasn't been a house here in over 30 years. I frowned. That can't be right. We were just. He interrupted. A family drowned here. 1993. Their house collapsed into the tide. They never found the bodies. The words sank into me like ice. I wanted to argue, to scream, but I couldn't. All I could do was stare out at the water and listen, because under the breeze, under the lazy splash of the waves, I could still hear them. Voices, faint, call my name. That night, back in the hotel, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophie, her white eyes, her hand reaching through the dark. I decided to check my phone just to distract myself. It was water damaged, the screen flickering. But one video file was still there, time-stamped last night, 3:07 a.m. I didn't remember recording anything. Hands shaking, I pressed play. The video showed darkness, then a faint blue glow. Water, bubbles rising. The camera panned shakily, and there I was, floating underwater, eyes open, my face pale. Beside me, Sophie, her hand resting on my shoulder, her lips barely moving. And just before the screen cut to black, a distorted voice whispered through the speaker, "You returned to us." The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and drove inland, far from the coast. But even now, sometimes when I take a shower or hear the sound of running water, I swear I can still hear Sophie humming somewhere behind me. And when I close my eyes, I see the lagoon, waiting, water wave the end.